Good evening, everybody. It is Tuesday, the 25th of July, 2023. You're back for another, and not just any old episode of the Tiger Town podcast, but in fact, the 50th episode, the 50th anniversary episode of the Tiger Town podcast, mate. We started from the bottom, now we're here. Mate,
Yeah.
50 episodes you and I have sat across the interwebs from each other and talked a whole bunch of nonsense for an hour a week for the last few years. So, congratulations, son.
Yeah.
Good work.
Congratulations to you. It's a big milestone. To all three of our listeners out there, thank you for sticking with us. It's been good. Been a journey. Maybe we should retire
Well,
while
I will make the comment that it's most definitely bigger than 3. Yeah, no, it's
4.
mate, it's good. We're halfway to 100, and then sky's the limit from there. How you doing?
Now we're waiting for those lucrative sponsorship deals to come through, and this can be our full-time gig. How good would that be?
Well, yeah. Oh, look, quite possibly. Have to wait and see how we go. But yeah, if Nike, Adidas, Ford, Chevrolet, and Gold, ASX Limited want to come knocking, you know the number.
True.
Have you had a good week, mate? How you travelling?
Yeah, good. Just same old, work, kids. Not as busy as your week's been, but yeah.
Yeah, mate. I've had quite the week. We welcomed a beautiful new addition last Friday, little Audrey. So
Congratulations.
we are adjusting. Thank you very much. We're just adjusting to life as a family of 4, and as you well know, with that comes a few challenges and a few bits and pieces, but nothing gets in the way of this podcast, my friend.
No, I was about to say, I think when my second was born, we were, I think we just started this season of the podcast, and you let me have the night off. I didn't let you have the night off, so let's.
You've always been a bit of a bludger, mate. That's all right.
Nah,
Someone's got to keep the show on the road.
More of a flake than a bludger.
The show must go on.
Yeah, well, it's got to for the 50th, doesn't it?
West Tigers last week lost to the St George Illawarra Dragons. As much as the spoon is not guaranteed, there's still 5-6 games left remaining in the season. Obviously, that particular game, a lot of it, I guess, relied upon that, knowing that these two teams are not what you would call
quality
high-end opposition. Yeah. So, yeah, we're now 4 points or 2 full games back from Canterbury and Dragons, the two sides that could possibly let us off the hook. And obviously, a win against the Dragons of any nature doesn't exactly make the world a better place for us, but it most certainly would have at least allowed us the opportunity to continue in many ways with some hope that we would get away from that dreaded last spot position.
Yeah, very much so. And it was it wasn't all that it was definitely frustrating to watch. But the thing that I just kept noticing was honestly the reason that we lost, bar a couple of very poor fifth tackle options, but the reason that we lost was a lot of rookie mistakes. And we have a very young side. And that's going to happen, unfortunately. There was a couple of, rush of blood moments in, there was the Tupou knock on trying to get to his feet and they scored off the next play. And it was just, a bit of rush of blood, a bit of inexperience. And, very frustrating to watch in that retrospect, but definitely understandable. If we really think, if you really think and you really focus on it, it's definitely understandable.
Yeah, an important point to remember as well is that their team was close to full strength, which is embarrassing for them, in my opinion. Yeah. Look at where we are and missing half of our spine, with Dewey obviously out for the season and Brooks not being there, and and then you have the likes of Talau and Wakeham just have all-time shockers and clangers, and so yeah, I'd be a little bit more concerned if I was the Dragons, considering it was 3 tries apiece, to be perfectly honest. And if not for a little bit of low percentage, how albeit impressive work from Zac Lomax, then we probably walk in and beat them. If Zac Lomax is in a orange, black, and white jersey last week, I dare say we probably win by 4 or 5 tries.
Yeah, he definitely. I think he definitely was the reason that they won that game. He was very, very, very good. He was probably their only, like, even you put Hunt in this sort of section, he was probably one of their only performers. Everyone else just sort of looked like they were plodding along. I mean, look, I've got, I think that Tyrell Sloan has a lot of potential, but he's had a lot of potential for a couple of years now. He still makes very stupid mistakes, and there's just something about the Dragons outfit this year that I honestly think they're worse than us. We just sit lower on the ladder.
Yeah,
And everyone
most
say,
definitely. And yeah,
I was just
and
going to
that's what I
say,
was alluding to. You go.
I was just going to say, look, we're probably about to say the exact same thing anyway. But it was just like, with the team that they have on paper compared to, the team that we have, yes, we have probably the second or third best hooker in the game at the moment, but we don't have a quality halfback. Like, Ben Hunt is probably in the top 5 halfbacks of the game. They have a pretty experienced backline. Even Tyrell Sloan sort of fits in that. I think he's had 50 odd games now. And he got outplayed by Buller by far. Apart from
Yeah,
that, probably that one little sweep play where he scored off that, but that was just literally a flick pass from a moan. That was all that was. That
yeah.
flick pass could have gone
It
anywhere.
was, yeah, and it was a good play, and it was, credit to Sloan for being in the right place and backing up well. That was just a good play, a bit of individual brilliance, and they happened to nail those moments, and we didn't. I mean, talk about expressions like shooting yourself in the foot or letting teams back into it. We did everything we possibly could to give them every opportunity to try to take that away from us,
Yeah.
which in and of itself, that's inadvertent stuff. That doesn't happen deliberately, obviously, but boy, howdy, in games like that, you would think that something like completion rates and discipline for basic penalties would be something that you would
Yeah.
try at the very least, probably one of the first dot points on your list of to-do things when you run on the field in a game like that. And wasn't there. Just woeful schoolboy errors, and some of the discipline and some of the penalties that we conceded were just pathetic in so
Oh,
many ways, like just awful.
so
And
bad.
the Dragons in many ways didn't really take advantage of it either.
It was nice to see, but when they were down to 12 men, we actually took advantage of that extra man for once. Twice, like essentially twice. We scored 2 tries, so
Yeah.
yeah. There you go.
Mm.
Am I back? I think you lost me
Yes,
for a
not
second
good.
there.
So that, sorry, mate. No, that's all right. I'll get you back.
Yep.
Yeah, so that essentially relegates us down there to big old fat 17th on the table. The grand total of
Yeah.
3 wins this season to go with our 4 wins last season.
We will literally be probably the only team in history that have won the wooden spoon and finished lower the next season.
Yeah, it's a good feeling.
Oh
It's
yeah,
definitely a good feeling.
it's very positive. There's a lot to love about that happening to a team that you support and you love.
Most definitely.
But,
Mate, there is, I guess, I don't know if it's a situation where I've come to terms with it or I made peace with it, but I think one part of me, I didn't get overly emotional in that game last weekend, and I was actually really looking forward to the game because I figured that it was a game that it was a toss of a coin. We actually genuinely had a shot to win it. If we rolled out the side that we've named this week, which we'll get to later in the show, with the likes of Brooks and Staines and whatnot in the side, I actually probably would have been pretty confident of a win last week. But it's gotten to the stage, that game aside last week against the lowly Dragons, I say that full well knowing we're lowly, that I know the season's gone, and the season's been gone for quite some time in some ways. So I guess I maybe as a coping mechanism might have one eye on 2024, and I don't want to be doing that, but
What else
excuse
can
me.
you do?
Yeah, and when your team is struggling, right, and you're getting to the back end of another awful, crappy season, I think that's what you sort of do. You do sort of tune out a little bit and trying to engage with every aspect of it when there's no weight on it, and that's what it is. There's, win, lose or draw. There's not a whole lot of weight on any of the results anymore. A couple of wins if we could jag a couple now that we've got our most of our players that we were missing back, then yeah, it could make a difference, and maybe we could sneak up a spot or two and avoid that dreaded 17th spot. But outside of that, you sort of float a little bit to the back end of the year and give yourself a bit of time to decompress and wipe the slate a little bit clean, and then start focusing, I guess, on the next season, and get a little bit more excited come November when you start seeing a few photos of preseason, and go from there, don't you?
Yeah, definitely. You get definitely detach a little bit come this time. I don't know if Storm fans have really ever felt this, but towards the back end of the season, you just detach a little bit, and you're just like, oh yeah, it is what it is. And, you cop the brunt of all the heckling from the people that know you support the Tigers, but that's about it. Like I, as a Tigers, like I'm frustrated as a Tigers fan. It's another season essentially down the gurgler. Excuse me. But if I was Bulldogs fans, I'd be a lot more worried than we are. A lot more worried than we are. I think that not just how they're performing on the field, but the fact that they're just going out and buying players to fix issues they believe are there. Like, no matter what, like, that's got to. Like, I was talking to in our little chat, I was like, surely their cap is screwed.
Mm.
Surely they're going to go back down the same avenue that I guess Des put them under again.
Well, yeah. You look at just the news this week, just yesterday, I think, that they're now shopping Ryan Sutton, who just arrived this year, and their captain for Taylor Mariner.
Yeah,
Both serviceable players, both not on outrageous kind. I'm sure their contracts are healthy, but yeah, I mean, nothing says cap squeeze like looking to force your captain out of the club.
yeah, exactly. And that's it's like I said, it's disappointing to be a Tigers fan and most likely get another spoon. But for the money that they've spent, the people that they've brought in, like I think I read somewhere that this week for the Bulldogs is the first time they can actually field their first grade side that they've wanted. And if they don't perform, I'd be really, really concerned if I was the Bulldogs. More so that they've signed Serraldo on 5 years. I heard somewhere that Bulldogs fans are already calling for his head.
Yeah, you got. I mean, you got to have some sort of patience as well. But in many ways, to your point, they've bought a lot of now players, and I don't know how many project players they have. The likes of they got Crichton coming in next year, obviously a centre that they'll be playing at fullback, which makes no sense. But they bought Reed Marnie, who I've never been a huge fan of, but you can't discount the fact that he was a grand final playing hooker for Parramatta last year, and was talked about in Origin representation as a possibility in the last couple of years, and he's been in relatively good form. You got Kickow, who's a weapon. You got Matt Burton, who's played Origin, played for Australia. We know the quality of Matt Burton, and in and amongst the rest of that squad, there's some pretty decent quality sprinkled in there as well.
Yeah, Matt O'Carr.
But yeah, of course, Josh Adokar. You got Kiraz that's been playing the house down for the last year or two, and he's quite the handful. And I mean, they had Luke Thompson, as much as he's been out this year for
TPJ.
quite a lot. But yeah, exactly. So they had a success now team this year. It might not be exactly the squad they want to get to, but most certainly the quality of the players on theirs is something that screams a lot more than 6 wins, in my opinion. And look, to be perfectly frank, 6 wins is twice as much as us. But if you're 6 from 19 and we're 3 from 18, it's not like your streaks ahead. And you consider the fact that we are genuinely in that rebuilding phase. You consider the fact that we were without 3/4 of our spine for a good 6 weeks in the middle of the season. and we've been missing Dewey for the vast majority as well. And then you just take one look at our back line, the youth and the inexperience in that all year. And, the two squads in many ways don't compare, albeit the fact that our forward pack has allowed us to remain competitive in many ways. So, and we've got a very clear path. It's hard to look at the Bulldogs and see where they're headed in that department, and their junior sides, I think, from my perspective, are going relatively well, but yet they still to what you were saying, are still trying to buy every man and their dog and plug holes left, right, and centre.
Yeah.
Word just this morning that they're in for Tough and pretty close to getting him as well, and yeah, I think there's context. There's context around why teams are struggling. There's always context around them. There's context around the Dragons, the Bulldogs, us. Some might call it excuses. Some might call it reasons. But it's context. It's contributing factors that lead to a lack of success. And yeah, it's difficult to see who you would rather be at this very point in time. But I think long term, and in terms of a foundation as a club, I think we have now got a better base on which to grow from next year and beyond.
Yeah, I think we do too. I think we've got a very good makeup there of a side that can build together and grow together, especially with the Finu brothers coming in. The thing that the one key piss, well, we are piss poor, but the one key piece that we're missing is just an experienced halfback. That's it. And hopefully you can shed some light on that. I haven't heard anything else since the Caesar rumours, but I actually think it was you that told me that Appy actually went to Pascal and said, "Get me an experienced half and get me one now." So
yeah, there's a few whispers around that. Yeah, last week or the week prior, Appy and his manager basically had a meeting with Pascal and said something along those types of lines, which was, yeah, I need an experienced half or a couple of experienced halves. I can't work with where we're at the moment. And then off the back of the whispers about that meeting, lo and behold, he re-signs and extends for 2 years at the back end of last week. So obviously he got some pretty good answers, and there must be something incoming there. So
yeah,
yeah, I don't think that the rumour mill has changed tremendously in the last week or so, but I guess there's a couple of favourites that we've discussed that may well be firming in that department. Obviously, we spoke about Aiden Caesar on the pod last week and the pros and cons that come with him, and 32 years of age, but obviously, someone who has played at a very high level, hasn't played much rep footy, but obviously played in a grand final as a halfback, and has a good kicking game, calm head, can steer the team around. Most importantly, he's experienced and knows what it takes to get their team around the paddock. And the other one that has popped up a little bit, probably since the weekend, is Jaden Sullivan, who in many ways seemed as though he was signed, sealed, delivered to the Doggies again out of St George. But my understanding is that he's been given permission to leave, and that we're in for him pretty well. And I don't know that there's too many suitors that are going to take that type of a signing away. So it could well be the case that heading into next year, we're looking at the likes of Jaden Sullivan and maybe Caesar to start, with Fayunu to ply his trade a little bit, maybe in Cup. Knowing that he has played 6 or 7 appearances, Latu I'm referring to, 6 or 7 appearances in Cup for Blacktown workers as it is, and multiple tries, line break assists, that sort of stuff. Not setting the world on fire, but he's an 18-year-old. So I don't get the sense they're in a hurry with him. 4 years for he and his brother. So this is somebody they're going to build the club around in conjunction with Buller. We then look at what that spine can continue to develop with the likes of Talon, Appy, and then Buller at the back over the off-season. So that's probably a discussion for maybe a bit later in the season as we're wrapping up, I guess. Maybe we talk 2024. But yeah, those two names in the halfback, or in the halves, I should say, what is the scuttlebutt at the moment. And we need someone, and I'm confident we will get. What would you make of that type of a combination? Let's say a Caesar at 7, Jaden Sullivan at 6 to start the year, and with the likes of Fayunu chopping at the bit to get a crack at some point early next year.
It makes the most sense in my eyes. It's a smart play, which means we probably won't do it. But it would be interesting because would you see Sullivan as a traditional halfback, or would you see him again as a 5'8"? Because then, if that's the case, we also need to start thinking about these halfbacks coming through as well. So there's obviously, I think is it Gavin or Galvin coming through that
Galvin,
yeah,
Galvin's
Galvin.
currently 5'8". He's more of a 5'8" though.
Yep.
Big, tall, rangy bloke, and the talk is that he, just because of his build, primarily, he'll probably settle into more of a second rower, that Wade Graham type.
Yep.
That if you had a key injury, he could slot in, but outside of that, he would hopefully, if he fills out enough, maybe move into that position or a lock position or something. Another one to look out for is Alex Conti, who is, I think he might be appearing in the Cubs coming up in Tamworth. But he's 17, is my understanding. So he's a year or two below the likes of Talon Silva and Josh Falidi and Latu Fainu and all these guys.
Yeah.
And Galvin for that matter. But yeah, there's big raps on Conti. Quite big raps. I think he's the best junior halfback in the club or in the system at the moment. So, yeah, it makes it difficult too, because if we are looking at wrapping our club around the likes of Fayunu, which you do, I mean, at this stage, we've discussed ad nauseum the quality that he has got so far and how chuffed we are with him coming over. But we do have Australian schoolboy Lachlan Galvin, who just is setting the world on fire in a different way. But he currently 5'8", so you've got to look at those sorts of things. And it's a good point you make that if we need to be careful that this contingency plan and the succession plan around the halves is done wisely and making sure everybody is on board, because 4, 5, 6 doesn't fit into 2, and if you don't get your scheduling right and if you don't get that transition plan right, then any number of things can happen. Not least of all being some of our gun juniors getting the shits and chuffing off elsewhere and having success elsewhere. So
yeah,
that can be a hard thing to balance.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. Like you think about the potential of a quality spine that have developed together. You think straight away of Penrith and Luai and Cleary. Like they know each other's games inside and out. They know exactly what they're doing, and that's the thing about these really quality half pairings that really come along very rarely. I think those sort of situations, I think I've maybe seen twice in my watching, well, that I can really remember. And, maybe 3 times if you count the Johns brothers coming through Newcastle. But I can really only think of in the last 20 years, maybe Foreign and Cherry Evans and Cleary and Luai. Everyone else has had one quality half that, or one more dominant half, and the other one is just kind of the support play, and they just learn how to play each other's games through the years of playing first grade together. But those two, they kind of came up together. So yeah, it's one thing that if you can get it right, it is pure magic.
Yeah, and that's the balance, isn't it? You look at any decent development club worth their salt is going to have somewhat of a production line, and they would have highlighted the key contenders in key positions when these kids are 15, 16, 17. I should mention as well, we've got the likes of Anthony Large coming through as well, who's 16, turning 17, I think. He might even be similar ilk to Conti, who is more of a running 5'8", and he is very, very good too. Very good at this early stage. In some ways, he's getting similar level plaudits as what Fayunu did at the same age, and he's only a year or two back from him. So again, that's another one that you have to be mindful of. And are we looking at then going, rightio, well, by the time Anthony comes of age, do we look at transitioning Latu, who hopefully has had a year or two or 3 of first grade, maybe away from a 5'8" into a halfback position? Do we see how that rolls out? These are all ifs, buts, and coconuts, and we don't know where it lands. But the other side of the coin as well is, I haven't specifically had a look in recent times at the market for the end of 24, 25, 26 in terms of what halfbacks are available. And we still have big money that someone needs to take. And
Yeah,
if you spend anywhere, you probably spend there. And the reason we find ourselves in an Aiden Caesar, Jaden Sullivan situation is because we
there is no one.
obviously swung. Yeah, there's no one at the moment, and who we had a crack at, we didn't land because, understandably, they all stayed at their same spots. You know, the likes of
Mm.
Moses and Munster and Johnson and Pearce and all these blokes. So, um, yeah, look, a lot to play out for sure. But in the halves department, yeah, it's good. In some ways, it's very good to hear that at least there's a couple of names that I think can do a job. You know,
Yeah,
Brandon Wakeham, God bless him, has done his best this year. And without him, I would love to have seen where we would be. But unfortunately, his ceiling is just not up to snuff.
no, it's not, and
And
that is the
I
unfortunate.
appreciate everything that he's done. I'm sure the club does, but
Yeah, exactly, and like he again he had some very good games. We had good games, but he played that support role. You know, he he took a lot of the pressure off Brooks when Brooks was there and let Brooks do his thing that he needed to do, which is honestly I think we're gonna see Brooks taken to another level next year at Manly because it's going to have the same situation, but he's just going to have a very quality half next to him. So take the pressure off him, let him do his thing, and then Brooks created the the opportunities. But yeah, I just like Wakeham. You've seen it at the Bulldogs, and unfortunately, we've seen it at the Tigers. He really isn't a first grade halfback, unfortunately. Um, can't steer a team around. Doesn't exactly make the right choices when we're needing him to. Um, obviously Laurie was the best performing half on the field. I feel like even in the Dragons team, I think Laurie's like outshone Amon as well as Hunt. But yeah, it's unfortunate for him. I mean, I was listening to commentary maybe it was a couple of months ago, and Brad Fittler said that Wakeham came through the New South Wales system as well, and he was actually one of the best performers in the New South Wales system. And you hear it time and time again. These juniors that come through that have so much potential really play well against kids, but when they come up against men, it's just a different game. So it's unfortunate, but
mm,
I'd still
yeah,
re-sign him as a backup half. I think we have to, even if
mm,
it's just for a 12-month deal until other situations. We will obviously most likely won't re-sign Will Smith. I think that's probably dead in the water. Um, we've got Fainu. We'll have hopefully have Sullivan, and then hopefully have another half in Caesar. That's we still need a very not a quality, but we still need a serviceable halfback, and that was what the issue was. If you
yeah,
remember at the start of the year. Start of the year, we didn't have one for Brooks, and then we
mm,
had to sign Wakeham because that was all that was on the market. And you know,
mm,
he did his best, but yeah, he's a backup half at best, unfortunately.
mm. Yeah, and I agree with you. I think if you're running with Dewey, who's out for most, if not all, of next year, Fayunu, if you get Sullivan and Caesar, you're still one short because you've only got three halves available. At a
Yeah.
pinch, you could play utility in your squad as a fourth, like a Will Smith, like you said. But from what I've seen from Will Smith, I'm not interested in that, and I don't know that there's anybody else that could do that sort of role. So, yeah,
No.
you might have to go awake him. I think at the very least, look, you offer him a train and trial or a New South Wales Cup contract, and so he's in the system. If he gets something better, wonderful. I don't know if he will,
No, I don't think.
and maybe play some Maggie's games, and you try not to blow a top 30 on him. But yeah, you have to wait and see.
Yeah, yeah. It's look, it's more just covering bases. To be honest, it's more like if we absolutely need to, more than anything. But I don't think I asked a bit of a question, but it was sort of a question with another question on the back of it. I don't really think you answered the first part of it. mainly because I asked another question after it. But how do you see Sullivan? Do you see him as a halfback, or do you see him as a 5'8"?
Mate.
Yeah. See, that's me too, and that's the thing. Like, Sullivan's still quite young too. I think Sullivan's only 22 or something like that. So I think he's quite young too.
It might even be 23. I'll have a look at that.
But if he was if he could turn himself into a genuine half, that might even be a half pairing for the future because he is skillful.
21.
21. So there you go. Like, he's young, and he's definitely got some growing to do. He's definitely got some maturing to do. But if he was a halfback, like a genuine halfback that was on the lookout, I'd sign him up in an instant, and I would start to develop him and Fainu in the halves. That's how I would go about it.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think you look at his age there, and he's been around for a couple of years playing first grade. So you probably look at that and go, okay, well, at that age, you've still got a lot of potential to be able to learn some of those basics and the differences in what a halfback versus a 5'8" needs and what you need to add to that part of your game.
And you
So
think
then
about.
you might look at,
There you go. Sorry, I cut you off.
I was going to say, then you might look at a legitimate contingency where you take a Caesar for a 1+1, so a 2-year. You play Sullivan at 6. You have him learn the craft off Caesar. And then by the time he's 23, 24, can take that halfback spot for a couple of years, whilst Fainu comes and makes his way into grade, provided that he's doing what he needs to be doing. And then maybe that's something you could look at as an option moving forward.
Well, that's the thing too. And you also think about who's probably one of the most famous number sixes to transition to a controlling number 7 in Benji. So Benji,
That's what I was thinking about, yeah.
Benji can show him how to transition. Because Benji was the flare. Benji was the back end of the controlled set to create something and then go through a hole or flick pass or throw the ball between his legs to Matt Utai. I don't know if you remember that try. But yeah, back end of the, like, you think about the year that Brooks won halfback of the year. The only reason he won halfback of the year was because he had the number 7 on his back. Benji controlled that side. So yeah, I think
that took him. That's a good point. And I was going to raise the same thing. And I guess it took Benji quite a while to learn how to game manage.
Yeah,
he started as a fullback, for example, and then made 5'8", and then ended up playing halfback, or at the very least, that halfback style role. So, yeah, maybe it doesn't take that long if you start applying that apprenticeship a little bit earlier, 21, 22, a couple of years in those situations. With that specific purpose, I don't think Benji originally had any goals of becoming a game manager, so never applied himself in that area when he was younger. So, as he slowed down, as the game sped up a little bit, as he got older and more experienced, then on the run, maybe 28, 29 and beyond, he had to start to learn those skills at that stage. But if Sullivan were to come in with the express purpose of starting as a 5'8" and learning how to apply his trade as a game managing halfback, then that's a possibility.
And I wouldn't say no to that. I think that'd be, I don't know, it'd be, because I personally believe Sullivan's got quite a good baseline for his as a half. I think he's got a pretty decent kicking game on him. He definitely knows when to run. I think the thing that most halves take a lot of time to develop, like you just said, is that game management style. Is that when to slow the play down, when to drift left, drift right, when to really set it up so that the next 3 sets is when actually something's going to happen. Not just trying to score off every set, which is something that a lot of young halves do. The rush of blood, everything just goes to the head, and they just want to score. But like you said, if there's a plan in place, and this is all of us literally talking hypothetical. If anyone's listening there and feel like we have some insider knowledge about what the Tigers can do, if we did, we probably would tell you everything that is going wrong in terms of what's going wrong with the club, because we don't know anyway. But this is all hypothetical. This is all. If we were the coaches, might be what I do. So this could be our interview for a coaching role potentially for the Tigers. So, if Pasco's listening, we might come down and give you a bit of hand if you really need it, especially with your haircut. But yeah, like it sounds like a pretty sound strategy to me.
Yeah. And I think it has, to, I guess, rehash an old phrase I used earlier in the pod, it has context around it as well. We're not looking in a market full of gun halfbacks with plenty of money up our sleeve to go, no, we don't want any of them. We want that guy from St. George Illawarra, and we want to transform him into our gun halfback in 2 years. It's given the scenario we find ourselves in. It's given the fact we don't have any halves. There's no marquee halves on the market for this year or next. There's money that needs to be spent, and that's the position that we find ourselves in. So it's about adjusting expectations and going, given the scenario that we are in, what is our best? Firstly, what are our options? What are the pros and cons of those options? And then which one do we want to go with? And so I guess in that type of situation, a pairing of Caesar and Sullivan with Fayunu learning his trade underneath them could be a decent enough possibility. It's certainly better than what we're currently got going on.
Yep, definitely.
2 weeks ago, our starting halves in an NRL franchise side were Brandon Wakeham and Will Smith.
Yeah.
So there are problems that need to be fixed, no doubt.
Yeah. So, and that's the thing. They're probably not stupid enough to understand that that's not an issue. They just can't really do anything about it because there's nothing to be done about it, like nothing that can be done about it.
I'll guarantee you this. Everybody involved with high-end decision-making at every NRL club, when you get to NRL club level, whether it's about squad management or whether it's about coaching decisions, tactics, whether it's about juniors, whether it's about recruitment, whether it's about up-and-coming juniors, these are smart people. I don't care if they're at the Tigers or they're at the Dragons or they're at the Bulldogs or they're at Brisbane, Penrith. Everyone in those positions has some type of, they are adept at these decisions. They have good perspectives. They know the game inside out in many ways. You don't get to those spots, in my opinion, for being a complete numpty, like people like to say. People like to rag on the likes of Pascal and Adjupantelis about decisions that they make and call them idiots. These blokes are not idiots. They're not idiots. You don't get to these positions in society, in corporations, in businesses, in professional sporting teams by being idiots. What people think is, I don't agree with those types of decisions. Doesn't make them idiots. So, no doubt these guys would be looking at all these situations 3 times over, 8 days a week, and have run over scenarios ad nauseum as to how do we get out of this position? How do we address the half issue? How do we address the holes in our squad? And people are so quick. You look at the commentary and some of the online commentary around Fulton, for example, and before the Fayunas and Appy signed and Appy extended last week, people are many people sitting there saying, oh, Fulton, what's he done? He got here 3 months ago. All he's done is release off a Hangowie. Well, he's hopeless. He's an idiot. He can't sign anyone. What do you think they're doing? Sitting there staring at a blank whiteboard going, oh, what do we do now, guys? I've got no idea. I'm out of my depth here. Just because there is not something bubbling to the surface or something floating to the surface, it doesn't mean that the submersible did not collapse down beneath the Titanic and that, shit beneath the surface isn't happening. The superficial way of looking at all this stuff drives me mental. I know it wasn't your point, but it's just, you know what I mean, when people are talking about that sort of stuff.
Very wayward tangent, but I'm listening.
Yeah, very specific tangent, but I guess it was a segue off, or a tangent, I should say, off what you were talking about when it comes to you saying, I'm sure that they've considered these things. Yeah, 100%, no doubt. And they would have done it, to the nth degree, and they would have done it, 4,000% in more detail and with better combinations and better plans than what we do. And they would have tremendous plans in place, got no doubt. Whether they come to fruition or not, and the average punter like ourselves and our listeners, we only find out these things in due course when they become public knowledge. So, yeah, that's the hard thing. Sometimes we get little tidbits of information maybe before the public hear it. But generally speaking, we've all got to wait until decisions made and outcomes are locked in, and that's the joys of being a football fan.
Yeah. Well, look, I agree with you to a degree in terms of they are not idiots. They would like Hadjman Tellis is the owner of Brighton's lawyers. He's not an idiot. He's very intelligent, and he probably does look at every situation. I do think that there are times when they either miss the point or they don't think things as thoroughly through as they should. But that is everyone. Nobody's immune to that. Nobody. The only issue is they're in the public light and everything gets shone on them. That's it. Now, as for the fact that all we hear is all this commentary and stuff like that, the thing, and this probably I feel like there should be a segment of this pod now of Toby bashing the media because I hate the media, but it doesn't make anything better when the media legitimately, I'm going to say this out loud, make up lies because they hear something from a bloke in the next urinal say something like, "Oh, that could be a good story." That's probably their source. I don't want to give up my source. Oh, why? Oh, because he was sitting in the next urinal holding his dick. Like that's it. Like that's their source is a bloke that they have no idea who it is, but they heard a whisper, and you can tell it time and time again.
Sometimes.
And sometimes I'm going to say 90% of the time. I don't think there's a lot of the time where I'll just read some absolute muppet writing whatever they want to, and it's clickbait. It's clickbait worthy. But yes, I digress, and then I went on a tangent and just bashed the media because I hate the media. So
Oh, who doesn't? Hey, we both digress.
yes,
A lot of this discussion came off talking about the major hole being halfback, and it has been for quite some time. You mentioned that probably 27 minutes ago, but I'm glad you did. Uh, I don't disagree. I still think we've got issues in the centres. I think that's a problem. And one thing I just wanted to raise with you, I guess ahead of next year, is twofold. Excuse me. I can't hide off the camera.
no,
And it's in regards to the centres. One, we actually get a chance to see this weekend, which is pretty exciting, which is Junior Tupou playing in his correct position of actually centre. For those listening, he came through as a centre predominantly. Played a little bit of fullback, played a little bit of wing, played a little bit of second row of all things for Canberra and then through the Brumbies, but predominantly he was a centre. So we get a chance to see that and whether or not that is something that could work for next year. The other one was Charlie Staines is not yet re-signed, and whispers of other teams maybe having a sniff is disappointing because we were both really impressed with what he did. I really like having him back in the side. He is no heavyweight when it comes to his size, but he's an excellent finisher. He's a threat. He's quick, and he has a damn bloody good go.
he has a
And
dig.
I'm a big fan
He
of
has
his.
a dig.
He does a dig, and someone had mentioned a possibility, depending on other positions, of him getting a run in centres as well. And originally I turned my nose up at it, and then I thought, you know what? Who is somebody who is lightning quick, slenderly built, at first glance doesn't seem to have the quick feet of a Ponga or a Reece Walsh, but has absolutely brained everyone this year in the centres?
Are you saying Joey Manu?
Hamiso Tebiwafido.
True.
And I wonder if there is some similarities in the types of the games that he and Charlie Staines bring. Similar build, similar speed, similar evasiveness, but they don't seem to possess a Benji Marshall step or anything outrageous other than just the pure speed. So anyway, I just thought I'd float those couple of ideas to you. What would the thoughts of a Charlie Staines? It'd be a hell of a trial, and it probably would be weakening his position as a winger. But yeah, it intrigued me a little bit to not write it off. What would you think about that?
First and foremost, I wouldn't want to scrap Toa. I think Toa is still one of our
No,
best.
sorry, yeah, it would be to play alongside Toa.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I don't know. For me, he doesn't read a traditional center, and that's might be a good thing or a bad thing. Who knows yet? That's beauty of hindsight. And as you know better than as you know, I'm not going to say better than most, but as you do know, center is probably the hardest position to defend. Um, just your reads need to be on point consistently. We've seen
Yeah.
what happens over the last few weeks when they're not. Um,
Yeah.
you know, but it'd be like I want to keep Staines regardless of where he plays. I do. I think that attitude is something that can become infectious. Like if a bloke that's 80 kilos ringing wet is running harder than your back rower is, you need to have a long, hard look at yourself. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'd if he wants to trial center, give him center. We know that he's
Mm.
not the fullback anymore. We know that Buller now has real estate on that. But if he feels like he wants to be a center, give him a crack. I think it couldn't hurt.
Yeah. And the other advantage to keeping is him is, excuse me, there's your backup fullback.
Yeah,
If something were to happen to Buller, Staines is your backup fullback. You need someone. We're losing Dane Laurie, who was this year essentially became our backup fullback, I guess. If something were to happen to Buller. But yeah, the other side of the coin, I guess, defending in the centres is speed can allow you to correct for edge decision making mistakes. So slow centres need to have perfect decision making because they don't get a second bite of the cherry. Whereas someone who is quick could possibly make a mistake or two in their decision making on that edge and be able to be quick enough to make up for that error. So they could be late to jam in and get there in time. They could be they could slide when they should have jammed and still have enough to cut off the play. So it just would be another advantage in that regard. I actually don't know what he's like as a tackler in the defensive line. You obviously don't get to see wingers or fullbacks do too much defensive work. But yeah, anyway, thought experiment for tonight.
yeah, and let's expand our mind. Why don't we? So
Speaking of expanding our mind, I like that segue.
that's a
This
weird.
week, mate, we play the South Sydney Rabbitohs, who have fallen all the way down into ninth position, our traditional home, ninth position.
Yep.
And we're very lucky because after 12 weeks out, Latrell Mitchell decided to come back against who? Against us. Because, of course, he did.
Because that always
Oh,
happens.
joy. Oh, joy. If it's not Tom Trbojevic returning against us, it's Latrell Mitchell or Cameron Munster
Well,
or
Caleb Ball.
everyone. Yep, we're good at it. So, mate, let's go through the lineup for this week, shall we? And then we will, once I find it, and then we'll have a bit of a chat about the upcoming game. Obviously, 6 o'clock this Friday in Tamworth. Dream Buller is the fullback. Nofaluma, Charlie Staines are the wings. Junior Tupou moved into centre this week with Stafford Toa. Dane Laurie retains his spot at number 6 at fullback. We spoke about how well he played last week. He was a threat with the ball. Luke Brooks returns at 7 from a hamstring injury. Steph, Ute Kamanu, David Clemmer are the props. Apisai Coruscant is the hooker. Papali'i and Bateman are the edges. And Fanua Pole locks the scrum back to that position again. Will Smith is the 14 this week, so both of our backup hookers are out of the starting 17, or the 17, sorry. Sean Bloor, after being a late scratching with a quad strain last week, returns to the side in number 15. Alex Twal is 16, and A. Tarsi James retains his position in the 17.
I think War
Manamua,
was
Kapoa, Simpkin.
more of a loss against the Dragons than we sort of understood. I think that
I
aggression.
think so too.
He definitely,
Yep.
when he came on, he
Just let
definitely
me finish the full squad, and then we can talk about
no.
it. Matamu, Kapoa, Sipkin, Talau, De Silva round out the 22. Thanks for letting me finish. Sorry, you were saying.
Just that you mentioned Blore, and Blore was
Yep.
actually ended up like he was starting to really be that impact player that we needed off the bench.
Most definitely. Yep.
And I think he was a big out. I think he definitely could have
Massive.
brought a lot of energy that we needed, especially in that second half. Like you think
Yeah.
about the game prior. I can't remember who we played the game prior, but yeah. See, maybe it was the Knights. Could have been the Knights. When he came
Nice.
on, yeah, when he came on, a lot of momentum swung because he just ran
Yeah.
hard. He ran good lines. He did the dirty runs when he needed to. Tackled hard. And when somebody puts those shots on, those runs on, it's infectious. And yeah, you need someone like
Yeah.
that. Like Asatasi James, he's a big boy. He's a big boy, but he doesn't have the same aggression. Imagine him with a bit of Blaw's aggression. Oh, he'd be
Mm.
hard to stop.
Look, I think he does. I think he does do, and I think he's shown a bit of that back fence running style in the Reggies. I just don't think we've seen enough of him yet to see that, but hopefully that can start to happen a little bit. Yeah, I agree with everything you said about Blore, most definitely. I would have liked to have seen him have that opportunity to start in lock because his ball playing, I think, is relatively decent as well. And I think that's something that he can actually sort of build himself into. And fingers crossed, touch wood, that injuries, for the most part, are going to start to become behind him a little bit as his body gets into his sort of mid-20s now, Sean Blore, so and starts to harden up a little bit, which would be good. But he's made such an impression on the coaching staff that there was a bit of talk, sorry, a couple of months back that he was being shopped. That now has stopped. So I've heard word that the club wants to keep him and wants to keep him around, and that's been off the back of his form in the last couple of months. So that's really pleasing to hear. And yeah, he's a big asset moving forward.
If we can
Quality bloke
keep
too,
that
from what I've
aggression
heard.
up, yes, definitely.
Good player, but quality bloke too. So
Mm.
um, good personality, good personality traits to have in the club.
Well, yeah. I mean, like I said, that sort of mentality can become infectious. So if he can, if we see it a lot, especially at the Tigers, when it comes to contract situations or running out of contract, they tend to play really, really well. Then they re-sign a contract, or the contract gets extended, or X, Y, Z, and they just decide to go back to playing like dog shit. And a perfect example of that, unfortunately, is Nofaluma. He's done that 3 times, I think, now in his career, where he's had an average season, then it's his season to re-sign, and he has an absolute outstanding season, re-signs, and goes back to playing an average game. Um, so hopefully, if that is the case, and he's part of the long-term plan, just keep up what he's doing, and I'll be more than happy.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. Obviously, that back line's a bit different. Where Charlie Staines there in on the wing, and Junior Tupou moving into the centre. So his first game in centres for us. What do you think Tupou in the centres will bring from a positive standpoint? What do you think about his game lends itself being a good centre?
Um, I think he's tough, and he has those tough lines, and he can definitely break the line, bend the line from that perspective. Um, haven't seen enough, from the quick plays that a lot of these centers need these days. The quick tap ons, the Zach Lomax flicks, everything like that. Haven't seen enough of that because he's been on the wing. But for some reason, I feel like he's got that in the bag. I feel like he'll definitely have one or two of those. I think he'll probably have a. He never really puts a fend on that I've seen. He always runs up with the ball and runs hard. So maybe there's a fend in him as well. But look, it's a lot of ifs. It's a lot of ifs for me. I haven't seen him play in the centres. I've seen him have some up and down moments, especially in the last month on the wing. His decision making on the wing hasn't been the best in terms of defence. Um, he's come in when he hasn't really needed to. Hasn't backed up when he's needed to. Not all the time, but sometimes it's lapsed. So again, it's a lot of ifs on my behalf. He could be good if he could perform if, but yeah, I just don't know.
Yep. Well, we'll get a chance to see. I guess at the back end of a season like we've had, like I said far earlier in the show, that we have one eye on 2024 in many ways. it's the opportunity that the club has to play around with a couple of little trial and errors and see what lands and see what sticks. You don't want to be doing that when the season is just firing up, I guess, next year, or even in trials, you don't really get a good proper look at it. So they've got a good month and a half now to play around with a few bits and pieces and see what they can come up with. And obviously, that's one that interests them. I think the side is strengthened. I mean, Tommy Talau last week was abhorrent again after playing 2 good games in the last 3 years. He went
Yeah,
back to his regular fumbly, bumbly, butterfinger
and
self
everyone's
and was
everyone's
shit
saying I
house.
can't believe they let him go to Manly. I'm like, are you
Oh,
joking? Where's
man,
Tuilagi been
Manly,
like this year?
mate, Manly must be wrapped. I'm going to scroll all the way down to Will Smith there in 14, mate. I have not been particularly impressed with his limited showing in a couple of games this year, but he's obviously been picked there for a reason. Now, I'll ask your thoughts in a moment. My theory is that Simpkin is there or thereabouts. I don't know. They see that he, with talent arriving on the scene so quickly, is integral. But talent, I think they are deliberately now recognising that perhaps some game time in Cup is probably going to be best for his development rather than 12, 15 minutes every single week
Yeah,
in first grade at this stage, I think. And also, Appy's at the stage, I think, where with 6 games to go in the year and having the best part of a month off, he's probably wanting to play 80 minutes a game.
yeah,
And so I guess from that point of view, that's what I'm thinking in that regard. And so maybe a 12-minute hooker, 12-minute 18-year-old hooker who we're trying to develop is a bit of a waste of a spot. What do you think?
no, I agree. Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I actually, I have a bit of a theory about why Will Smith was picked as well. I think what may very well happen is Laurie Staines will actually come off because he's coming back from a perforated bowel. And then this is the thing, and then Laurie will go to with the wing, and Smith will go in the halves, or it's there in case um, Brooks's hammy isn't quite there, so he
Yeah,
can
good
cover
point.
multiple options. And I think that's why Will
Yeah,
Smith's.
good point. He is a bit more versatile than having that second hooker. So, yeah, maybe they're not 100% sure, and he gives us coverage in that regard. We do have two obviously coming back, and I guess Smith at a pinch could play centre, and you'd push Tupou out to the wing if Staines doesn't have his best game or he's struggling. And as you spoke about with Brooks in the halves, obviously Smith can do a job there if needs be. So that's a good point.
Yeah,
Mate, how do you see this game playing out? Obviously, South's on a bit of a slide lately, but they have had their injury concerns, and they
yeah.
remain, as ever, a very talented and threatening
Oh,
side.
any team that still has Cody Walker in the side is dangerous, regardless of what else is going on. He won us the game in Game Three for Origin, and then also Trell Mitt comes back, as we just mentioned, which is fantastic. It's amazing. I love it. But look, I think Souths are going to win. I think they're going to win comfortably. I think they'll win by probably 3 tries. Um, uh, I'm trying to think of some positives, but I think one probably for me the positive is going to be Staines will probably have a pretty good comeback game. I think he'll have a point to prove because, like you said, he doesn't have a deal after this year. He'll probably be looking to get that secured. So I think he'll have a point to prove, and I think he might get over for a 4 pointer.
Okay, is that your bold prediction as well,
That's my
all
bold
wrapped up
prediction
into
as
one?
well. All wrapped up into one. What about yourself?
Well done. I think you're on. I think you're very much on the money. Look, in regards to South, I think they've got a very strong starting 13. I don't particularly rate their bench. Moali is okay as an up and comer. Havili hasn't really recaptured his Canberra form when he played
Mm.
predominantly as a utility, but a bit of hooker as well, and was a real go getter. Tom Burgess, I think, has been really good in his time, but I think he's definitely on the slide. And Jed Cartwright, haven't seen enough of Jed Cartwright really just playing these little bit part minute roles off the bench to really be threatened. But, as you mentioned, the quality of that side is undoubtable, and Latrell will probably be a little bit short of a gallop, and I think obviously we're a soft target at the moment, so they're going to ease him back in. touch wood, I don't see him really pushing the envelope and trying to dominate the game physically. I think he will probably just try to do the bare minimums and get through the 80. So I think the major threats are probably going to come from the likes of Cook and Walker, as you said. I think Cook sees soft target teams as an opportunity for him to really get a roll through the middle with his forwards. I do like the fact that our forward pack can match with these guys pretty damn well, in my opinion. Hamasele's been playing some okay football for a name that is not a household name in many ways. Joy Arrow is a quality player, but I'm not a huge, massive raps on him. And you got Jacob Host there starting as their other second rower. So I don't know that they are, I guess, A plus across the board in terms of the forward pack. Sorry, so maybe we could control their forward pack and Cook a little bit. But yeah, their back line is slick and it's pretty well drilled.
Yeah.
Tane Milne shits me no end.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
he's a firecracker and a grub.
Yeah, he doesn't know how to tackle. He just knows how to throw a shoulder into a chin.
Yeah. So I'm with you. I think that Souths will do it pretty comfortably. I think they're going to do it 5 or 6 tries to 2. So something like 30-12 or 30-10, something like that. I can see Campbell Graham getting 2 or 3.
Yep.
Quite easily. And then I can see them putting the Q in the rack and us making it relatively respectable in a way, I guess. But in terms of bold predictions, I think that to be honest, I'm trying to look at this and see something that's standing out for me, but I don't particularly see it. I'm going to say that Charlie, I like what you said in some ways, and I'll probably just parrot you, and I'll give you all the credit for that one. But I think Charlie Staines will have a really solid return from injury game. I think he'll take a couple of good high balls. I think he'll run for high 100s meters, a lot of kick returns and whatnot, and I think he'll finish a good try also. So I think that'll be the thing that we'll expect to see, and hopefully off the back of that, we might even nab a little cheeky re-signing or something next week. We'll have to wait and see.
That'd be good.
Mate, anything else to add before we run through our PSAs and wrap up this show?
No, actually, considering I didn't think we had that much to talk about again tonight. I say it almost every week sometimes, when especially the back end of the season when, there's actually, like I said, that detachment. I just feel like we don't have that much to talk about. But then we've run over an hour again, so we can just talk underwater,
Good.
you and I.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good content, and we enjoy doing it. And 50 shows we're in now, mate. And our viewership and our listenership is never been better. We're not breaking world records, but we're certainly growing, and we love the feedback across all our little networks. So we love what you do, guys. Thanks for I guess listening. Thanks for supporting the show and reaching out to us and liking our content and messaging us and all this sort of stuff. We started it as a couple of blokes that just have a chat, and I think in our tagline it still sits there that just two Tigers tragics having a yarn, and we enjoy it, and we genuinely do, and sometimes it's a chore, as watching our games can be as a Tigers fan, but we, as Lee Hadjipentelis says, keep the faith, and we're always keeping that faith. So
sometimes
long
we do.
may long may it continue, and unfortunately, you might be stuck with us up until 250 episodes, maybe, listeners. We'll have to wait and see.
That'd be nice and fun.
All right, mate. We play Souths on Friday, 6 p.m. Up in Tamworth, beautiful part of the country, just south of Armidale there in the New South Wales country. Be quite chilly out there, I would imagine, this time of year. If you're in the area, obviously get out there and support the boys. We say that every single week. Another thing we say every single week is support the show by hopping onto the YouTube channel, Tiger Town Podcast, Spotify, profile by the same name, and follow us, share it around, share it with your friends, even if you think they can get a laugh out of it. Even if they're not Tigers fans, we'd love to have people hopping on board and bumping our viewership up. Now, speaking of viewership and quality, West Life Podcast and the West Tigers Podcast, we say it every single week. Those guys do things better than us. Get over and give them a listen. Their content is top shelf, absolutely gorgeous. Make sure you do, when you head over there to those two podcasts, you tell them who sent you. The cheeky little blokes from Tiger Town Podcast. Mate, it's been a pleasure as always. Thank you for the 50 shows, mate.
Yeah, 50. I just want to say something too. You say it every week, they do it better than us. Hey, we're 50 shows deep. We're getting closer and closer.
We're working on it. We're trying to play catch up to those lads.
Yeah.
Very good. All right, mate. Well, let's wrap up the show with what we've done for 50 episodes now. Go the mighty West Tigers.
Go the Tigers.